My wife refused to let me attend her gala. Then the host introduced me as the main sponsor. Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. The dress was emerald green. Marcus Thompson noticed it the way he noticed most things about Elena when she was performing for an audience she hadn't yet assembled, with the specific, observational attention of a man who had learned, over 7 years of marriage, to read the costume before the performance began. The emerald dress meant the gala mattered to her in the category of things that were supposed to communicate arrival, the category that included the right neighborhood and the right friends and the right events attended in the right company. He was not the right company. This had been established at 6:43, when Elena had come out of the bathroom in the emerald dress with her hair arranged and her jewelry selected with the care of a woman staging herself for a specific kind of photograph, and had looked at Marcus sitting on the edge of the bed in the suit he'd put on an hour earlier, the dark navy, the one that fit correctly, the one Vivian had once told him communicated exactly what it needed to communicate without trying. And she had stopped. "You're dressed," she said. "I thought we were going together," Marcus said. "Marcus." She set her evening bag on the dresser and turned to face him with the composed, practiced patience of a woman explaining something she'd decided was straightforward. "We talked about this. We talked about you going with Justine," he said. "You didn't say I shouldn't come." "I said the gala was important," Elena said. "This is the Meridian Arts Foundation Gala. The people attending this event they're at a specific level, Marcus. The conversations are going to be about things that require. I need to be able to move through the room the way I move through the room, and I can't do that if I'm also managing." "Managing me," Marcus said. She had the grace, briefly, to adjust her expression. "I'm just saying that this is a professional event for me. These are people I need to impress. People whose opinions of me matter for my career, for my reputation in certain circles. And I think it's better if I go with Justine, who understands that world, who moves in it naturally, who fits," Marcus said. "Who fits," Elena said, and the confirmation arrived without apology, with the specific, direct honesty that was almost worse than softening because it left nothing to interpret. Marcus looked at the suit he was wearing. He looked at Elena in the emerald dress. He looked at the bedroom they'd shared for 6 of the 7 years of their marriage, with its careful furniture and its accumulated objects and the framed photograph on the dresser of the two of them in Charleston on their 4th anniversary, when things had been different enough that neither of them would have predicted this particular Wednesday evening. He stood. He took off his jacket. He hung it carefully on the valet stand. "Have a good evening," he said. Elena picked up her bag. She kissed him on the cheek with the precise, airless contact of someone completing a social obligation, and she left, and the sound of her heels on the hardwood faded down the hallway and the front door closed and Marcus Thompson stood in his bedroom in a dress shirt and looked at the photograph from Charleston and felt the thing he always felt in these moments. Not the burning thing, not the reactive thing, but the cold, clarifying thing, the thing that said, "You have been watching something for a long time and you have now seen enough." He picked up his jacket. He put it back on. He called Vivian Hayes. He should explain the gala. The Meridian Arts Foundation annual gala was, in the architecture of Atlanta's philanthropic and social calendar, one of the significant events, a fundraiser for arts education programming in the city's under-resourced schools, attended by the specific cross-section of Atlanta's business, cultural, and civic leadership that made certain events worth attending for people who cared about both the cause and the company. It raised between $800,000 and $1.2 million annually, depending on the economic conditions of the given year and the success of the sponsorship effort. Marcus knew these figures precisely because he had been looking at them in detailed budget reports for 3 years. He had become a sponsor of the Meridian Arts Foundation Gala through the same patient, methodical process he applied to all of his philanthropic investments: research, evaluation, a clear-eyed assessment of organizational capacity and mission alignment, and the specific, practical question of whether the money would do what it was supposed to do. He'd been introduced to the foundation's executive director, a woman named Patricia Osei, through a mutual contact on the hospital foundation board where he served, and Patricia had made the case for the gala with the specific, passionate precision of someone who had spent 12 years watching arts education programming transform outcomes for children whose other educational resources were minimal. He'd been convinced, which he was not easy to convince, because genuine conviction required genuine evidence and Patricia had genuine evidence. He'd become a presenting sponsor in year 1, a co-title sponsor in year 2, and in year 3, The year of the emerald dress and the Wednesday evening, he had agreed to the main title sponsorship, which meant that the gala bore his holding company's name in the sponsorship credit and that the budget for the evening's programming had been made possible in significant part by a commitment that Vivian had structured through Lighthouse Philanthropic Partners, Marcus's charitable vehicle, months before Elena had decided that her husband's presence at the event would require management she preferred not to provide. Elena had not known about the sponsorship. She had not known because she had not asked about his philanthropic work, in the same way she had not asked about his professional work or his investment portfolio or the specific, substantive content of the life he had been building in the margins of a marriage that had increasingly organized itself around her ambitions and her social architecture and the performance of a version of the shared life that she was the author of and he was assigned a supporting role in. He had not told her because, and this was the honest accounting, the one Marcus had conducted with the patient self-examination he applied to anything that required understanding, he had been watching. He had been watching who Elena was when she believed she knew what he was, and the watching had been producing information, and the information had been accumulating for 3 years into a picture that was now complete enough to act on. Patricia Osei knew about Elena the way Patricia knew about the important context surrounding her major donors. She knew that Marcus was married, that his wife was involved in Atlanta's cultural and social scene, and that the two of them did not attend events together with the frequency that might be expected of a prominent philanthropic couple. She had found this observation notable enough to mention to Marcus, once, with the delicate indirection of someone who had understood something without being told it directly, and Marcus had said, "It's a complicated situation," and Patricia had said, "I understand," and they had not discussed it further. But Patricia Osei ran one of Atlanta's most important arts foundations and had been doing so for 12 years, and she was attentive in the way that people who run organizations that depend on human relationships learn to be attentive, and when Marcus had called her on Wednesday at 7:15 to say that he would be attending the gala after all, she had said, "Of course, Marcus, we're so glad you'll be there," in a tone that contained, beneath its professionalism, a very specific quality of preparedness. The Meridian Arts Foundation Gala was held at the Four Seasons Ballroom, which was the specific, significant choice of an organization that understood that the venue communicated the quality of the event to the people whose attendance and generosity the event depended on. The ballroom had been dressed by an event design firm that understood what a gala was supposed to feel like. The specific, controlled luxury of a space that was not trying to impress you but was simply being what it was, which was everything your everyday life was not. Marcus arrived at 8:45, which was after the cocktail reception and before the formal program, which was the correct timing for a main sponsor who had not been on the original attendee list and whose arrival would require certain adjustments to the evening's acknowledgement sequence. He'd called Patricia from the car. "I'll need you to adjust the sponsor acknowledgement," he'd said. "Already adjusted," Patricia had said. He walked into the ballroom in the dark navy suit that communicated what it communicated, and he was escorted to the foundation's reserved table by a staff member who knew who he was because Patricia had briefed the staff at 7:30, and he sat down and looked at the room. The room was full of the specific, assembled quality of people who had dressed for a purpose and were moving through the space with the conscious attention of performers who understood they were being observed. Tables of 8 arranged in the ballroom's geography. Flowers in the deep burgundy of the foundation's color palette. The stage at the front of the room, lit with the warm amber that good events used for the serious moments. Elena was 3 tables to his left. She was with Justine, and 2 other couples Marcus recognized from the edges of Elena's social architecture, and she had not yet seen him. She was in the emerald dress, which looked excellent in this light, and she was laughing at something Justine had said with the specific, performative warmth of a woman who was exactly where she wanted to be and wanted everyone around her to understand this. Marcus looked at her for a moment, with the honest, complete attention of a man who is seeing something clearly for the last time before it changes. He turned and spoke to the woman to his right, who was a board member of the foundation and who recognized Marcus from a previous event and greeted him with the warm, professional regard of someone in the presence of a person whose institutional importance she understood. At 9:15, Patricia Osei took the stage. Patricia was exactly the kind of executive director who made you understand why the role existed. Precise and warm simultaneously, capable of the specific, genuine emotion that fundraising required without losing the organizational clarity that made fundraising effective. She welcomed the room with the specific, encompassing gratitude of someone who understood that everyone present had made a choice and that the choice deserved acknowledgement. She spoke about the foundation's work, the programming in 37 schools, The children who had been reached in the previous year, the specific, documented transformation that arts education produced in students whose other resources were limited. She showed 2 photographs. A child's painting, made in a program the foundation funded, and a photograph of the same child, 3 years later, at a school presentation, with the expression of someone who had been given a language they didn't know they needed. The room was quietly, genuinely moved. Then Patricia said, "The work we've described tonight, the programming, the partnerships, the outcomes, none of it happens without the people who believe in what we're doing before they can see the results. The people who trust the work enough to fund it, not because the return is visible but because the need is real." She paused, with the timing of a woman who had learned, over 12 years of these events, that the pause was where the room decided to pay attention. This year, the Meridian Arts Foundation Gala has a main title sponsor whose commitment to arts education in Atlanta has been transformative. This commitment has made possible everything you've seen described tonight, and we are profoundly grateful. Elena was looking at the stage. "It is my genuine honor," Patricia said, "to introduce the presenting sponsor of the 2024 Meridian Arts Foundation Gala, Mr. Marcus Thompson of Lighthouse Philanthropic Partners." The room applauded. Marcus stood. He looked at Patricia, who was smiling at him with the specific warmth of a woman who had known this moment was coming and had been precise about when it arrived. He looked at the room, which was applauding with the focused, directed energy of 300 people acknowledging someone they'd just been told deserved acknowledgement. He looked at Elena's table. Elena was not applauding. Elena was looking at Marcus, at her husband, standing at a table 3 tables to her right in the dark navy suit she'd seen him take off 2 hours ago because she'd told him he would embarrass her, with the expression of a woman whose working model of a situation has been replaced by a different model so abruptly that the replacement hasn't yet produced the secondary responses the replacement normally requires. Justine was applauding. Justine had turned to look at Elena with the specific, complex expression of a woman processing several things simultaneously: the public moment, the private knowledge she had about Elena's relationship with Marcus, and the connection between those 2 things, which was becoming clearer by the second. Marcus acknowledged the room with the quiet, unhurried composure of a man receiving recognition he's been given before and has learned to hold without either dismissing it or performing gratitude for it. He nodded once, in the direction of Patricia, and sat down. The program continued. He let the evening run. This was a deliberate choice, and he made it with the same patient, considered attention he applied to all his decisions, understanding that the evening deserved to be what it was, that the children whose paintings had been shown on that screen deserved a night organized around their work rather than around the interpersonal architecture of his marriage, and that there was something right about letting the Foundation's program complete itself before any other kind of reckoning was allowed to begin. He ate dinner at the Foundation's table and spoke with the board members around him and listened to the speakers who followed Patricia and applauded at the appropriate moments. He contributed to the live auction. He was present, completely, for the event he'd made possible. Elena did not approach him during dinner. She tried twice during the cocktail hour that followed the formal program. He could see her navigating the room from the corner of his attention, the specific movement of a woman managing several competing imperatives simultaneously, and he allowed himself to be in conversation both times, which was not a strategy but simply the natural result of being a person who was present at an event and therefore available for conversations. She found him at 9:57, near the windows that looked out at Atlanta's nighttime skyline, the specific, wide, luminous geography of a city going about its evening work. "Marcus," she said. He turned. In the emerald dress, with her hair still arranged and her jewelry catching the light from the ballroom behind her, Elena Thompson looked exactly like the person she had dressed herself to be this evening, polished and present and entirely composed. The composure was working, he could tell, working with the full effort of a woman who understood that the room was still full of people and that the room was watching. Underneath the composure, something was happening that was less composed. "You sponsored the gala," she said. "Yes," he said. "The main sponsorship. The title sponsorship." "Yes," he said. "For how long have you?" 3 years, he said. "Presenting sponsor in year 1. Co-title in year 2. Main title this year." She looked at the skyline. She looked at the room behind them. She looked at Marcus with the specific, searching quality of a woman trying to find the right entry point to a conversation she hasn't prepared for and can't organize the way she normally organizes difficult conversations. "You let me tell you not to come," she said. "Tonight. 2 hours ago. You took off the jacket and you told me to have a good evening, and you let me leave. Yes, Marcus said, knowing you were the main sponsor. Yes. Why? She said. He thought about how to answer this honestly, which was the only way he answered anything. Because the honest truth, he said, is that you wouldn't have believed me if I'd told you. You would have thought I was inflating something, or manipulating the situation, or making myself seem more significant than I was to change your mind about tonight. And I didn't want to change your mind about tonight that way. He looked at her steadily, with the clear, unperforming attention he'd always given her. I wanted you to see what was true. Not because I told you what was true. Because the truth arrived in the way it always arrives. On its own terms, at its own moment, in front of the people who needed to see it. Elena was quiet. The children, Marcus said. The programs. The 37 schools. That's why this exists. Not for tonight. Not for this conversation. He gestured, briefly, at the room behind them. At the people and the flowers and the amber light and the stage where Patricia had shown a child's painting and the face of the same child 3 years later. This is the work that matters. The rest of it, he let the sentence end without finishing it, because the rest of it was obvious and didn't require amplification. Marcus, she said, and her voice had arrived at the genuine register, the one underneath all the management, the one he had heard occasionally over 7 years and that had never, when it arrived, been anything other than real. I don't know how to. She stopped. I said you would embarrass me. Tonight. I said it like it was a reasonable thing to say. Yes, Marcus said. And you've been funding this event for 3 years. Yes. While I've been telling people. She stopped again. What you've been telling people, Marcus said, gently, is a version of our marriage organized around what you thought you knew about me. And what you thought you knew was limited by what you had chosen to learn. He paused. Elena, I've loved you for 7 years. I've been present in this marriage in ways that you didn't see because you'd decided where to look, and I wasn't there. I was somewhere else. In the office you said you didn't understand, on the calls you said seemed overly complicated, in the work you said seemed more like a hobby than a career. He looked at her with the honest, direct regard he'd always given her at her most genuine. I wasn't hiding. I was just in the rooms you'd decided weren't interesting. She was looking at the skyline now, at Atlanta going about its business below them, indifferent and luminous. What happens now? She said. I've asked Vivian to file, he said. She'll have the papers ready Monday. You should get an attorney. Is there anything? She stopped. Started differently. Is there any version of this where? No, he said, and the word was gentle and final and completely honest. Not because I want to punish you. Not because tonight was the end. Tonight was the visible confirmation of something that's been true for a while. I want to be known before I'm assessed. I want the people in my life to be curious about what I'm building before they decide what it's worth. That's not something we built in this marriage, and I don't know how to build it now when the foundation isn't there. She nodded. The nod of a woman who had expected this and is receiving it with more grace than she had available 2 hours ago when she left the house. I'm sorry, she said. I know, he said. I believe that. For what it's worth, she started. Everything, he said. Every piece of it. The arts programs. The children. The foundation's work. He let the sentence complete itself differently than she'd expected, turning the frame back toward what mattered. That's what it's worth. That's always been what it was worth. He looked at the room one more time, at the event he had made possible, at the people who had come because they believed in the work, at the table where Patricia Osei was speaking to a board member with the focused, purposeful energy of a woman for whom every conversation at this event was part of the mission. Good night, Elena, he said. He walked back into the ballroom. Vivian filed on Monday morning. Elena's attorney, a woman named Forsyth who came recommended and who had the specific, professional realism of someone who had reviewed the full scope of the situation and communicated it clearly to her client, engaged within 48 hours. The proceedings moved with the efficiency of 2 competent attorneys working toward fair resolution rather than prolonged conflict. The settlement was fair, because Marcus had instructed Vivian to be fair, because it was his standard, because he was not interested in punishment and had never been. He moved into the apartment he'd identified 2 weeks before the gala. East-facing windows, a proper kitchen, a desk in a room that was only a desk. And he arranged it entirely according to his own preferences without the ongoing negotiation that shared spaces required. He bought the coffee maker he'd wanted for 3 years. He arranged the bookshelves correctly. He cooked dinner at his table and ate it without explanation. He ran 5 miles every morning. He called his mother on Sundays. He worked, Which was what he did and what he would always do, because the work was the true thing, the organizing principle, the thing that had survived everything else and would continue surviving because it was real and rooted and not dependent on anyone else's willingness to see it. The Thompson Foundation for Undervalued Partners incorporated in October, 3 months after the decree was finalized. Its mission was specific and direct, in the way Marcus preferred: support, resources, and community for the people, men and women both, though the first cohort was predominantly men, whose contributions to shared endeavors had been systematically dismissed or unacknowledged by the partners who had benefited from them. The people who had funded the gala their spouse hadn't thought they were good enough to attend. The people who had built the business their partner had called a hobby. The people whose capabilities had been assessed by someone with incomplete information and found wanting, while the capabilities themselves continued producing outcomes that the assessment had made invisible. Marcus taught the first session himself. He told them the story: the emerald dress, the jacket on the valet stand, the have a good evening, the drive to the Four Seasons. He told it without drama, without the performed indignation that the story might have been told with, in the same plain, direct register he used for everything that required honesty. He told them, the purpose of what I'm about to say is not to validate your anger, though your anger is probably accurate. The purpose is to give you something more useful than anger. He told them, the most clarifying information you will ever receive about a relationship is what the other person decides not to ask about. Not what they ask and receive incorrect answers to. What they never thought to ask. The questions they didn't ask are a map of what they considered worth knowing. If you're not on that map, you have very clear information about what the relationship is organized around. He told them, protect what you build. Document everything. Know your standing, in every context, with the same precision you'd bring to any important asset. Don't let the management of that information be outsourced to someone whose understanding of your value is incomplete. He told them, find Patricia Osei. Find the people who know what you've built because they've been paying attention, who recognize your name before it's introduced, who know the scope of what you've done, who call you by name in rooms where other people are learning your name for the first time. Those are the people who are actually responding to you. He told them, the reveal is not the goal. The goal is the building. The reveal is just the evening when the building becomes visible to people who were looking the wrong direction. 23 men in a conference room on a Saturday morning listened with the specific, inward attention of people receiving something they had needed for longer than they could accurately measure. In November, Marcus attended the Foundation's post-gala donor reception, a smaller, more intimate gathering than the gala itself, organized by Patricia as an opportunity to express personal gratitude to the people whose generosity had made the year's programming possible. He sat at a round table with 5 other donors and the executive director and 2 of the program facilitators. A man named James who taught visual arts in 2 of the Foundation's partner schools and a woman named Delphine who taught music composition to 4th graders in a school where music had not been in the budget before the Foundation arrived. James and Delphine talked about their work with the specific, unself-conscious passion of people doing something they believe matters and watching it matter in real time. They talked about the students, named them, described specific moments, told the stories of children who had found something in their programs that reorganized what was possible for them. Marcus listened. This was the reason. Not the emerald dress, not the ballroom, not the moment Patricia had said his name into a microphone while his wife was 3 tables away not applauding. Those were the surface of the thing. The reason was James teaching visual arts and Delphine teaching music composition and a child whose painting had been shown on a screen in a ballroom and whose face, 3 years later, had the expression of someone who had been given a language. He'd funded this because it was worth funding. Everything else was a consequence. Patricia caught his eye across the table at one point, with the specific, quiet understanding of a woman who had been watching a donor for 3 years and understood more about his situation than she had been directly told. She nodded once. He nodded back. After the reception, he drove home through Atlanta in the November dark, through the city that had been his city for his entire life and that looked, from inside his car on an evening in November, exactly as it always did, the specific, luminous indifference of a place too large to be altered by the private events of the people moving through it, conducting its business with the continuous, unaltered vitality of a city that has always been here and intends to remain. He parked in the building's garage. He took the elevator to his floor. He opened the door of the apartment that was his, entirely, uncomplicatedly, without negotiation or management, his, and he hung up his coat and made tea and sat at his desk and looked at the east-facing windows, dark now with the November night, and felt the thing he'd been building toward through everything. Not arrival, because Marcus Thompson understood that there were no destinations, only the quality of motion. Not vindication, because vindication required a tribunal he had no interest in convening. What he felt was the specific, grounded rightness of a man occupying his actual life. The one he'd built, the one he'd funded, the one he'd chosen and continued choosing with the patient, clear-eyed attention he brought to everything that deserved it. His phone showed a message from Vivian. The Foundation's charitable registration is confirmed. Everything is properly structured. He typed back, "Thank you. Let's schedule the second cohort for January." He put the phone down. He drank his tea. He was Marcus Thompson, the man whose name was on the sponsorship credit of an event he'd been told he would embarrass, whose work had made possible 37 schools worth of arts programming, whose name Patricia Osei had said into a microphone while 300 people applauded and one person in an emerald dress did not. He was the man who had taken off his jacket and hung it on the valet stand and told his wife to have a good evening, and then put the jacket back on, because the jacket had somewhere to be. He was Marcus Thompson, and he was exactly where he was supposed to be, in the life that was completely and entirely and without apology his own. And it was, in every way that the word was capable of meaning, enough. I hope you enjoyed watching this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If it moved you, like, share, and comment on the lessons you took from it. Let me know where you're watching from, and I'll see you in the next video.